This episode of the Sports Box is brought to you by Mic'd Up Entertainment and DJ Mike Velardi. For all of your event planning needs, make sure you contact Mike at 609-864-5925 and tell him that you saw him on the Sports Box.
And we're on the air. Good evening and welcome to the show that, man, it's just that good. This is the Sports Box, where the only opinion that matters is right here. I am Mike Letta, a.k.a. Hamilton Mike. Brian, the Ranger Retard, my partner, is on assignment. Today in our continuing coverage to cover every team in the NFL, and we give you all the previews from all of our affiliates around the country, today we go to the Northwest. We are going to talk about those Seattle Seahawks. And who to talk better about the Seattle Seahawks is our affiliate out on the West Coast. Let's bring him back on the show because he gave us some great knowledge last year. We're going to get him again and see if we can drill him a little more for some Seattle Seahawks news. His name is Tony Pacello. Tony, what's up, pal?
Hey, how you doing?
Great to have you on the show again. It's football season, Tony. We got to get rolling again. We got to talk a little Seahawks football. You ready to roll?
Yeah, let's do this.
Attaboy. Seattle, a little bit on Seattle from last year. They were 10-6 team. They obviously won their division. Second round loss to Atlanta. They did, though, beat Detroit 26-6 last year. Difficult defeat to Atlanta last year. Atlanta, went off in the Super Bowl. Their pass defense last year was 8th in the league. Their rush defense was number 7 in the league. In the way of the offensive side of the ball, receiving-wise, they were 10th in the league, but rushing the ball, they were 25th in the league. That could be because of some injuries, some different things here and there. The loss of Marshawn Lynch last year, not having him could have hurt. But overall, defensively, this team really hold their ground at number 5th in the league, even though they lost Earl Thomas part of the year. So Tony, let's start with the defense since we're talking about defense so much this year. That secondary is going to be talked about, shuffled around this year. They do get Earl Thomas back this year, but Deshaun Sheed is probably their other cornerback is probably going to start the league on the PUP list. So there's some different guys they could probably plug in there, like a Jeremy Lane, a DeAndre Elliott, a Nico Thorpe. Do you have any thoughts about or have you heard anything about maybe the guy that's maybe the lead in the pack in the cornerback position for them this year?
I haven't really actually heard a lot of talk about the cornerback position. I know Lane's been around for a while, so they like to plug him. I know a lot of times they like to use him as a nickel back. I really am kind of anxious to see what's going to happen there too. I don't know if they're going to maybe try to sign somebody or bring in for a competition. I know Pete Carroll really likes competition, so they probably got 7 or 8 guys out there to compete. But yeah, it's that other cornerback position. Ever since really when Maxwell left, it's kind of been up in the air. They've plugged in a lot of different people. They brought Terry Williams over, which was horrible. And like you said, Snead played pretty good towards the end of the season there, but then Thomas went out, so
yeah,
made it a little tougher on the cornerbacks with no Will Thomas going end to end. So
yeah, and the talk is that the Legion of Boom is really not what they were before, but I kind of beg to differ a little. I think Sherman is still a good player back there. Cam Chancellor obviously can bring some thunder, and Earl Thomas can hang with the best of them. So it's just a matter of getting that cornerback position locked up. Now you talk about the linebackers. Obviously Bobby Wagner, solid linebacker in there. Ronald Powell is an interesting name back there at linebacker. Can you tell us anything about him or anything you know about Ronald Powell back in there at the linebacker spot?
I really don't know much about him actually at that spot. I mean, I know they got KJ Wright and they got Wagner, but other than that, I'm not too keen on the depth either on this offseason. It's kind of hard for me now because I live in Sacramento, so it's not on the local news all the time, so I kind of got to search around on the internet here and there to find stuff. But as the preseason kind of plays out too, you kind of get a little bit of knowledge there of what's going to end up happening. But yeah, I'm not too sure on that position besides the right Wagner.
And you look at and that's fine. You look at their defensive end too as well, and obviously Michael Bennett, strong defensive end for Seattle. It's a shame the Bucs let him go. I don't know why they did that, but anyway, you're going to have a new face out there at defensive end in the way of the Rubin, Garrison Smith behind him. I think Seattle's defense is going to be fine this year. Other than that cornerback position in Seattle, I think they'll be solid on defense. Do you agree?
Yeah, I do. I mean, a lot of it has to do with injuries. Like last year, Chancellor missed some games, and then Seattle, they were actually playing probably their best football when Thomas went down, because the week before they had played in New England on Monday night and beat the Patriots.
Yep.
And that was the game where, if you remember, Thomas kind of knocked what's his name, Gronk out.
Yep.
He hit him with that shoulder and knocked him out for the game. And Seattle was playing good. And then the next game against the Eagles was when Thomas went down. And then after that, they played 500 football. Their defense was decent one game, and then they go out and play like Green Bay and give up 40 points.
Yeah.
Like, holy smoke.
Yeah, exactly.
But if they can all stay healthy, the main core of that defense from the Super Bowl team even is still there. So it's just a matter of injuries. They all are getting a little bit older. So obviously, the older you get, the more prone you are to injuries. So we just kind of have to see, but hopefully everybody stays healthy. If they do, I think they have the caliber defense to lead the league in points allowed again. They were actually there last year until Thomas went out, and then after that, like I said, their defense down that stretch had a couple games where they gave up 30-plus points, and that kind of knocked them. I think they ended up finishing like 4th overall on points allowed, but
Yeah, that secondary was tired.
Still pretty respectable.
Yeah, that secondary was kind of tired at the end of the year. They were doing a lot to cover people, and you saw it in that last game before the regular season. And they were struggling. They were a little bit gassed. But like we talked about, I think the defense is going to be fine for Seattle. Even back with Ed Thomas back there, I think it's going to be fine in the way of what they're going to do. Now you talk about the offensive side of the ball, and this is interesting. You look at this offense, and they were 25th in the way of rushing last year because of the injuries that they had last year, and again, I think the loss of Marshawn Lynch, not having him out there, hurt them a little bit. But this year you brought in Eddie Lacy from the Green Bay Packers on a 1-year deal. You talk about Thomas Rawls being back as behind Eddie Lacy this year, and Procise I think is going to be in the mix as well. So let's just start with the running back situation. How do you feel Eddie Lacy is going to give them a big boost, or is he going to kind of be a fill-in rotation guy for that running backs for Seattle?
I actually think he's going to get a big boost. I mean, if you look at since he came into the league, yards after contact, he was actually second to Marshawn Lynch. So the guy likes to bruise and bang up, and a lot of our issues are offensive line. So I think if he can go in there and just kind of hit those guys and maybe wear them down a little bit, that might help with our offensive line blocking those guys as well. So I think it'll be a big boost. And then I like that, like you said, Procise. I mean, he was really coming around last year before he got hurt. Yep. And he's a different kind of back. I mean, he does have the ability to play back, but he's also really good, out in the flat, as a receiver, that kind of stuff too. So I think it'll open up. Rawls, I'm just leery on. I mean, he's never been able to stay healthy. The guy can play a game or two and then gets hurt. So I really don't have a lot of confidence in him yet. He hasn't shown me he can stay consistent. But yeah, I'm excited for Lacy. I think he's been making his weights like he's supposed to. I don't know if you noticed or know this, but Seattle has an incentive for him. So every time he hits weight, he gets paid. Yeah. So they're making, they're giving him a reason to lose the weight. So I know that's been kind of an issue with him, but I'm pretty excited about it. I think it's hopefully the next generation of Marshawn Lynch really for Seattle. And he's only been in the league 4 years. He's 26, so he as long as he stays healthy and keeps his weight down, I think he can give us a good 4 or 5 years.
Before we break down the rest of the offense, I just want to give a big shout out and talk about our sponsor. And we're back.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch that.
And we're back. So Tony, let's hang on, Tony. Stop for 1 second. Don't say a word. Hang on.
Okay.
And we're back. So let's talk about the offense a little bit more. We're talking to Tony Pacello. He's our affiliate, or to Tony Pacello. He is our affiliate out in Seattle for the Seattle Seahawks. Tony, let's talk about the offensive line a little bit. The line upgraded a little bit by bringing in Luke Jokel from Jacksonville, and they made a big move over this year. They're going to move over rookie Jermaine Afidi over to the left guard position to make room for Jokel. Do you feel this line is intact? It's good enough to protect Russell Wilson and give this running attack a little bit of room they need to move around?
Yeah, I'm hoping. I mean, they can't really get worse than they were last year, I don't think. So, hopefully they'll improve enough. And, a lot of last year's issues, too, was Wilson being injured. I mean, he actually had an injury on both legs last year, and for a good, month and a half, he couldn't really escape the pressure. you know, a lot of times he could make up for the horrible offensive line by running out of the pressure and creating a play, and that just wasn't there last year. So, you know, as long as the line, even if they can get slightly better and Wilson can stay healthy, I think we'll be okay there. But yeah, we'll just have to see. I mean, it's been an issue for 3 straight years. They keep saying they're going to address it. They'll draft a player, they'll find someone, and then they still aren't good. So I'm just hoping they're, like I said, slightly better enough to give Wilson a little bit of time, and with Wilson's mobility, hopefully we can make some plays.
Yeah, you talk about Wilson's mobility. I think Wilson it's his 4th, 5th year in the league now. 5th year, I think, in the league now. And he's learning that this isn't a run league. I mean, before, back in the day, probably 6, 7 years ago, you had guys like Michael Vick. You had guys that, you know, that try to run all the time. I think he's learning to use his mobility a little bit more, moving out of the pocket, trying to throw first, run second. And I think it's really paying off, and you've seen his growth in the league as a quarterback. I feel he's getting better and getting smarter in the way of, like I said, throw first, run second. Do you agree?
Yeah, he's even said that he really doesn't like to run. He'll do it if it's there and that's all that's there, but he would prefer to kind of stand back and try to let the play develop and hit the receivers. So, you know, and I'm really hoping this year, and you saw a little bit of it towards the end of the season, but I'm really hoping that Wilson Graham starts working out. Because, I mean, the guy at 6'7", just throw the ball in the air. If you can create just enough time to get him out there, just throw it in the air.
And you talk. Yeah, exactly. You talk about the Seattle team with the receiving core that they have. You talk about Jermaine Kearse, Doug Baldwin obviously had a great year last year, Tyler Lockett, and then I think emerging now is Jimmy Graham into that offense, which, you know, Jimmy Graham, I think, is a creature coming over from New Orleans, had a little bit of a rough time getting used to the offense, getting acclimated to it, but I think now you're going to see Jimmy Graham really make a difference in that offense in the way of an escape route for Russell Wilson and a big target. But like I said, the receiving core that they have, Doug Baldwin, Tyler Lockett, and Jermaine Kearse, I think it's an extremely sexy weapon and a really good angle for Russell Wilson to get to.
Yeah, I totally agree. And kind of the same thing as last year, though, with injury bugs. Like Lockett broke his leg towards the end of the season. And, you know, so, but, you know, actually one person that he kind of left off that really came around at the end of last year was Paul Richardson.
Okay.
You remember that catch he made in the playoff game with the one hand?
Oh, that's right, yeah.
Getting dragged to the ground. Well,
he only had a few catches. It was
a good play.
Yeah, exactly. So, again, Tony, like we do for everyone, we're going to put you on the spot. Seattle 10-6 last year. Unfortunately, second round loss to Atlanta. Atlanta went on to go to the Super Bowl. So what do you think of your Seattle Seahawks this year? What can you predict for them?
I'm gonna say probably an 11-5 season. You know, last year I think they would have actually finished better than that. They actually beat Atlanta and New England last year in the regular season. So they beat both Super Bowl teams during the regular season. And like I said before, that injury to Earl Thomas, when they had just walked out of Foxborough, they were 7-2-1, I believe, at that point. You know, and they finished the season 10-5. So they were 500 after that injury. So I think they've gotten better. I think the offensive line's a little better. I think Wilson's another year older. He's going to come into the season healthy. They signed Eddie Lacy. The defense, of course, still there. So I think 11-5 is realistic. Hopefully that'll be good enough to get a first or second seed and then, you know, get that first round bye and at least one home playoff game. Because, you know, if you go to Seattle in the playoffs, it's not an easy place to win.
Yeah, and you look at their schedule. They open up the season at Green Bay, which is kind of if you could see a revenge game from a couple years ago in the playoffs. But in the same sense, they go to Green Bay, then they're home for San Francisco, at Tennessee, the Colts, the Rams, then they go on the bye week. So, you know, not really that tough. Besides the Green Bay game, not that really tough of a start. You got 2 games in the East to come out to, in Jacksonville and the Giants. Other than that, I mean, this Seattle team has a decent schedule, but in the likes of playing teams like Jacksonville, San Francisco, again, obviously division game, you know, they're going to have their hands full. I think 11-5 is realistic for this team, but it's going to be a tough 11-5 for the Seattle team.
Yeah, I think, like you said, on that starting schedule, I mean, yeah, I think realistically you can go 4-1 going into the bye week with that.
Yep.
You know, Tennessee's a pretty decent team. The Colts, I just don't think they have a defense really to compete. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think that game's on Monday night in Seattle.
Yeah.
So that, Seattle actually, if you look at the record on Monday night, they have the highest winning percentage in the NFL on Monday night games. I think they're they've won 21 out of 29 or something like that. So they're like a 7-25 team on Monday night, and that's wherever you're playing, and then go into Seattle on top of that. I don't see the Colts winning that game. I do like Tennessee though. I really think that's going to be a team on the rise this year.
Well, the only thing I think,
Marcus Mariota, out of Oregon, so being from the Northwest, I follow him a lot.
The only thing about Seattle, I think, and a lot of teams have this year called the death stretch, where it could be, do or die if they're going to make any moves. After the bye week, Seattle goes to New York to play the Giants, home against Houston, home against Washington, at Arizona, and then home against Atlanta. I think 4 out of those 5 games are going to be very tough games. Other than the Washington game, I think I beat that handily. But those 4 out of 5 games, I think, are going to be very tough in the way of Seattle to really make some headway if they haven't already. If they have and they've built up a lead in that first 5 games, maybe they've won 3 out of 5 or whatever the case may be. Those next 5 games out of the bye week aren't a cakewalk either.
No, not at all. Arizona's always a tough game.
Yep.
And then you said Atlanta at home. Yeah, that'll be a tough game for sure.
Houston at home.
A couple of the other games on that little stretch.
Houston at home, and then the Giants on the road.
Yeah, Houston. I mean, defensively, that'll keep them in the game. But yeah, their offensive power, I don't know. Who did they just sign a quarterback or draft somebody? Houston?
Yeah, they did. We're probably going to get that on a different show. I can't.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember who it was.
Off the top of my head,
yeah. I think that's definitely a winnable game. But yeah, the division against Arizona and the Atlanta game definitely going to be tough. And that Giants game too. Giants got a pretty sneaky defense, and you never know with Eli. You can have one of those 500-yard, 5-touchdown games, but then again, he could have one of those 200-yard, 4-interception games.
Yeah, exactly.
He's pretty streaky.
Okay, so we got you.
Yeah, that'll definitely be a tough game.
All right, so no problem. We got you 11-5, and like you said, we will see what Seattle does. So that's all the time we have for this edition of the NFL preview show with the Seattle Seahawks. I want to thank our affiliate Tony Pacello for giving us the rundown on the Seahawks in the offseason and a little bit of preview of their season coming up. Tony, thank you very much. Always great having you on the show.
I think yes.
No problem. And listen, we are going to get Tony back on the show if anything happens in Seattle that we need him back on the show to give us commentary, to give us updates, to give us whatever the case may be. So, Tony, is that a good deal?
That sounds good to me.
All right, great. Thanks for coming on again. And we want to thank you for watching the Sports Box. Keep an eye out. We always got great social media. You can get us on Facebook at the Sports Box Show. Get us on Twitter as well. We're everywhere. If you haven't subscribed by now, get onto YouTube and subscribe. You get all of our fresh content, all of our updates. We'll get it for you fresh. Next time, remember, at the Sports Box, the only opinion that matters is right here. Thanks for watching, folks. See you. 1, 2, 3.
Don't forget to subscribe.